Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is episode 17 of the ABM All By Myself, aka a Bowel Movement podcast. I always appreciate the liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, remixing, promoting, and as of recently, like you guys know, it's important to make sure that notification bell is on. Ding dong, and get notified every day when these go live. You heard that right. These are daily. So in this episode, I want to talk about the greatest invention I ever conceived that was just brutally robbed from me by the elites. Or maybe I just didn't pursue it enough to actually do it because I was like 9 years old. But this story is going to take us back. Like I said, I was about 8 or 9 years old, and there could be a variance in there, okay? But let's just say I was 9 years old for cohesiveness. So 9 years old, we just had gotten our first computer in the household. Now, this was a time when computers were very rare. You know, flat screen TVs weren't out, cell phones weren't a thing yet, unless you had a briefcase in your car that held it, like a Zach Morris phone. Google it if you don't know what that means. It'll be funny. So we got this thing called a gateway computer, and this was the first evolution of like having it at your house. It didn't have to fit in a warehouse. It wasn't $30 million, and it could do more than just simple math. So Gateway, consider them the McDonald's of the computers. They weren't the iMacs, they weren't the Windows, and these were large boxes, like the size of a basketball. I know these days we have computers on our wrist, but at the time, this was about as small as it got. So if you remember the iMacs that had like the different color shells on them, and they probably had them in your computer lab at school, this was kind of the size that we're going with right now. That's what I want you to think of. So I had this computer, and it came with these discs, and all the time we would get disc in the mail that said AOL, Internet Explorer, and the idea is you would plug in your computer to a phone line and a lesson. That's why it's called online, because at one time there was no such thing as Wi-Fi, which we'll get into, but you would have to actually plug in an Ethernet telephone cable line into your computer, and that's how it would access the endlessness of the internet. So I would put these discs that I had received into the computer. It would make this noise, and that would be the computer dialing up. If you've never heard the noise before, you probably thought I was having some kind of a seizure right now. If you had heard the noise before, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So you'd put the disc in, it would start making this noise, and then at some point it would stop and say, "Congratulations, you're online, accessible to perverts all over the world to chat with you in an AOL room," which will also come back into play later in the conversation. But so, I would put this disc in, and I'd never get to that point. And it just irritated me. And I thought, why can't I get on the damn internet? Of course, it was because we didn't have a phone line that would plug into the computer. We weren't going to get one. I don't remember if I had asked for us to get one, but we didn't have one in general, right? But I realized, okay, if we need a phone line in the computer to get on the internet, why is my mom able to walk around the house on a phone that's not plugged in? It doesn't make sense to me. So what I did is I drew a little diagram. I drew the phone that my mom would walk around with, very much like the Zach Morris phone, actually. And I circled the antenna part of the phone, and then next to that on the piece of paper, I drew a computer, and then I made a diagram of what if we were to take the antenna off of this phone and plug it into the computer. Then we would have an antenna that could access the phone lines, and wirelessly, without being plugged in, we could have the internet. So I drew that on this piece of paper. I'm sure I showed people, but I was so far ahead of my time. I was showing fucking spaceships to indigenous tribes. They were like, what the hell is that? I don't even know what I'm looking at. It's like, just foreign objects that nobody could identify. And I'm getting redundant. I'm just trying to nail in there. It was so ahead of its time, right? So I ended up just putting this piece of paper in a piano bench that we had and forgot about it and thought, this will never happen. For eternity, we will be plugging computers into the wall. What a waste of technology. So years later, I actually did find that. My Uncle Gene, who we talked about in a story a few episodes back, he was the one that got me into drums. He lived with my mom, my brother, and I. He had this pool house full of instruments. So that same uncle, shout out to you, Uncle Gene. And he took that piano, and when I was probably in my early 20s, I went to his house and was going through some stuff with him, and I found that piece of paper. Unfortunately, I don't have it, so you're going to just have to believe me on this one. But so that is me. I invented Wi-Fi when I was 9 years old. I should be fucking Tony Stark right now. I should be able to press a button and have the whole wall of my house open up to a crater that I own that has a fucking all kinds of cool animals in it and all kinds of prehistoric pets. But unfortunately, I didn't have a support system around me at that time that was willing to make it happen. And I don't think anybody even thought it was a good idea because it was just a fucking little kid drawing on a piece of paper. But where we're going to go now in this story is my first time actually going online and being in a chat room and almost being kidnapped. That might be a little bit dramatic, but it's always a possibility when you're on a chat room to get kidnapped when you're sharing information. So precautionary tale, don't go in random chats if they still exist and give out your information. So this story about me on this chat line is going to go back to probably when I was like 11 or 12, a few years after me inventing Wi-Fi and it not coming to fruition. My mom had a friend. She worked at Macy's at the time, and it was a lady named Diane. And actually on the Shane Dawson podcast, we did talk about this a little bit, but Diane was the first transgender person that I ever knew in my life. She was an older lady, probably in her early 50s or so, and she was still living with her previous partner. So her partner, she was a male, early on in life. She got married to a woman. I don't remember or not if they had kids, but then Diane decided she wanted to transition and she wanted to become a woman, and that's how she felt more comfortable in life. So she did that. She was now a woman, and her wife actually still lived together, which I thought was very cool. And they just had an awesome personality, right? So one day, my mom tells me that Diane and her wife are going to go to this awesome train museum or this train exhibition, and they invited Shane and I because they figured these two young kids would be into trains. Now, were we into trains? Not really. But this was so nice of her, so we accepted the invitation. So my mom took us over to Diane's house. We hung out all for a little bit, and then my mom left so we could just enjoy our night. And then the next day we were waking up bright and early so we can go to this train exhibition. So that night, Diane had a computer in her house, and she was fortunate enough to have a phone line that plugged into it so she could get online access. She told us if we wanted to go online and we wanted to play some games, have at it. So I remember being by myself in this room. I don't know what Shane was doing at the time, probably like watching movies or something like that with them. But I was in this room and I made it onto an AOL chat room. And I went on several of them, but they seemed kind of icky. You know what I mean? Right away when you go on, how old are you? Or I think it was age, sex, and location, ASL. So you would put, I'm 15, I'm a male, and I'm from Long Beach. But at the time, it was like, I'm 12, I'm a male, and I live in Lakewood. So that was pretty much some slang for you, a throwback acronym. So I was going on these chats, and some of them were just creepy. They'd ask me, like, I'm 12, I live in Long Beach, and I'm a dude. They'd be like, oh, are you single? I'd love to hang out with you and meet up. And it was like, oh, that's kind of creepy, like ASL back to you. And then they would just say, oh, well, I'm the same age. But you knew deep down that you were dealing with some creeps in some of these chat rooms. So I ended up finding one that was about wrestling, because I was very into wrestling at that time, and I thought if you're into the same stuff as me, there's no way you're a piece of shit, because I'm not a piece of shit. So I made my way into this wrestling chat, and I'm talking about, SummerSlam. I'm seeing if anyone's biting. I want to have a conversation about The Undertaker, about Stone Cold. I want to have these fun, interesting conversations of something that intrigues me. And that's what's happening so far. And then somebody private messages me. I didn't even know that was a thing, but this little window popped up and it said, hey, want to chat? So I said, yeah, of course I want to chat. Are you a WWF fan? And they said, I sure am. They asked me, the ASL. I said, oh, I'm a 12-year-old male that lives in Lakewood. And they told me they were a 12-year-old female that lived in like Massachusetts or something like that. So I was like, wow, look at that. I actually met a girl that cares about wrestling. I am in love, and this is who I'm going to marry and spend the rest of my life with. That was my idea behind it at that time. I had never really connected with a female with wrestling, so this was unique. So we talked for quite a while, and then the whole conversation turned into, oh, I wish I could watch wrestling with you. Oh, I might go to this live event. Too bad we can't go together. And she really wanted to go with me, and she asked if she would be able to send me not a DVD, actually. I'm getting way ahead in technology here, but I think she asked if she could send me maybe some kind of memorabilia, a VHS, or something like that in regards to wrestling. And I said, of course, this is so exciting. I can't wait to receive it. And I gave her my address. And then right after I pressed send, I thought, I just got bamboozled possibly. I'm scared as fuck. I just gave somebody my home address where me, my brother, and my mom live, thinking that it's a 12-year-old girl that wants to go to a wrestling match with me. And what if this is just one of the creeps from the Ultimate Chat that's trying to be a pervert? So, yeah, I gave them the address, and I was just nervous as fuck. I have to be, probably for the next year or two, I thought at any point some creep is going to show up to our house. He's going to ask for me, and then I'm going to have to tell my mom that I was on a chat site at Diane's house talking about wrestling, and I gave out our address, which she would be probably pissed off. I think I would be upset if my kid gave my address online in a chat room, but that ended up never happening. So thank God we moved out of that house. I still remember the day we moved out of that house, I thought, whew, I made it. Nobody ever came. No one ever showed up. And my mom will never have to know about this chat room experience. Until now, of course, my mom is an avid listener of this podcast. So, Mom, I'm sorry to tell you, I gave out her address when I was young to a girl I thought would be into wrestling and want to hang out with me. But it was probably a fucking creep. So maybe something did happen and I was just never let aware. But yeah, as far as I know, it never came to fruition. No perverts ever peeped on us, and we were good. So now let's go back to Diane's house, because the train story is pretty funny itself. We ended up hopping into her truck. She had a trailer that we were going to take with us. It was probably a 2 or 3 hour drive, and they thought that me and Shane were super into trains, which we couldn't be less interested, to be honest with you. But we enjoyed Diane and her wife. They were fun people. They were, good banter, always were cracking jokes. So we were excited about that aspect. So we get to this train museum or this train exhibition, and it just looks like broke down shit in the desert. Nothing that a couple of kids would be enjoyed about or would enjoy, but we were there. And it was hot. When you're fat, the heat does not add a level of excitement to anything. So we had that going for us too. Luckily for us, Diane had packed some snacks, which consisted of cereal in a bag. She wasn't aware that fat kids like chocolate and things like that. So I'm sure, I don't remember, but over the course of the day, we probably snacked out, right? On something aside from cereal in a bag. But one of the things I remember, and I don't have a whole lot of memories, this episode was really about me inventing the internet, so this is a little bonus. I just remember there was these people that would do role plays, or they would reenactments, and there was also people there that were trying to sell stuff. They were trying to sell things to train enthusiasts, and one guy in particular really piqued me and Shane's interest. He was yelling about how he was making this kind of electricity, and it was going to be cheap and free, and he was showing us with this demonstration, and we were fucking blown away. So we went back into the trailer and we're like, oh my gosh, Diane, you got to come look at this guy. He got this and that and the other. And she said, oh, that guy's here every year with the same bullshit. He's just crazy and don't know what he's talking about. And I remember me and Shane laughing so fucking hard. I am guessing that Shane peed his pants. That was something that he did. I can't say I never peed my pants from laughing, but Shane had a low threshold, so he might have peed himself. I don't remember. On that note, I have a couple stories that are very fun about that, but we'll get into that in a later episode. So guys, this episode went by like a fucking breeze. I talked about how I got, bamboozled out of my $1 trillion invention. I almost got a pervert to come to my house like on some To Catch a Predator shit. And then we went to a train exhibition with Diane, the first transgender person that I ever knew, who was fucking rad, and had an okay time. Cereal in a bag isn't the best, but hey, you make do out of it. And what I'm going to do now that we're only 30 seconds left to 15 minutes is, you guessed correctly, everybody, we are going to be doing a freestyle. You've been loving them. In all reality, I am the most out of my element I've ever been before doing a freestyle in this moment, so you might hear the worst ever or the best. That's just the way that it happens sometimes, guys. That's just the way that it happens. Okay? Kev Brown, man. Shout out Kev Brown, one of the best producers of all time. Yo, who knows what's about to happen? Craziness ensues when I'm rapping. I got an idea, put it into action. I had Wi-Fi way back then. I really hope my mom ain't mad when she finds out all of the chatting that I was doing on AOL. Oh well, what the hell, they never came to the crib, so I got away with it. I thought one day I would open up the door and there would be a fucking creep right in front of me saying they wanted something from me. Not to take me to a WWE SummerSlam. Maybe they just wanted to fucking hold my hand like a weirdo, like someone on To Catch a Predator would do. So guys, I gotta real talk. That was the fact that that's still in there, if you heard it, is just a gift to you. That was possibly the worst freestyle I've ever done in my life. But the reason that I did it is because you guys enjoy it. And this podcast is not about me, my ego, putting myself out there to be cool. It's about putting something out there that you guys can enjoy on a daily basis. And right now, am I saying all this to take away from the fact how horrible it was? Possibly. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Have a great rest of your day. And as always, God bless.